amongst all of you today, and I'll speak on the topic of the missing self in the selfie. So, the missing self in the selfie, and the basic idea which I'll have, you can envision this as a 4-quadrant diagram. So, we could have, say, y-axis, x-axis, and so there are two aspects to our life. So the self represents spirituality, and selfie is the product of technology. So the selfie represents technology, the self represents spirituality. So we could have 4 quadrants, say no technology, no spirituality. We could have technology but no spirituality. We could have spirituality but no technology. And we could have spirituality and technology. So let's how I hope the diagram is clear. So basically the class will be about its 4 quadrants. So if we consider the missing self in the selfie, in which quadrant would this fall? Technology but no spirituality. So let's look at this. Martin Luther King said famously that we have guided missiles and misguided men. Our scientific power has outrun our spiritual power. I grew up in India, and India is immensely academically competitive. And I had this maybe idealistic vision that education is very empowering. And education can transform us individually and transform society collectively. And when I was studying my engineering, I also joined a social welfare organization where I was offering free tuition classes to underprivileged kids, to teach English, history, math, like that. And I was one of the premier institutes in India. And yet I noticed that even students who were much more brilliant than me seemed to not have much inner self-mastery. There's one student who was a university first rank holder, gold medalist for all the 8 semesters of his engineering. And at that time, he got the highest paying job in the history of our college. We had campus placement, and he was also a chain smoker. And I somehow couldn't figure it out. That if he can so easily figure out complex electronics problems, I studied electronics and telecom engineering. So he was just within moments he could solve things which would take us hours to solve. If he's so brilliant at this, why can't he understand that he's taking smoke and he's killing himself? At least he's hurting himself. But he would say that this helps me to think. And then, within a few months after he joined his job, he was diagnosed with lung cancer. And in the first year itself of his job, he succumbed to it. So that jolted me. Here was a person who was a genius at technology, but something was missing. I didn't see him as I didn't blame him, but I felt something was missing. He was an intelligent person, and yet he was not able to give it up. And I was not just placing myself on a holier than thou attitude. I had my weaknesses also. So the point was that I had this idealistic hope that education will empower. But although he had the power of technological education, still I found that he didn't have inner power. And that's what led me to, that is one of the things which led me to a spiritual search. And as I read the yoga texts of ancient India, especially the Bhagavad Gita, something very striking was revealed to me. I'd always been fascinated with science. And I used to read not just science books, but also the books, biographies of scientists, how they lived, how they discovered. And I had a profound admiration for science and scientists. But I found that what we have whereas through science, what we have discovered about the outer world is amazing. Simultaneously, what we have forgotten about our inner world is also amazing. So when Martin Luther King said we have guided missiles, now through technology we have acquired enormous power. But somehow inner power is lost. And Carl Jung said that the more outer power we have, the more inner power we need to manage that outer power responsibly. Today, anybody can just purchase an automatic assault rifle. Phenomenal outer power. If there is no inner power to regulate one's impulses, it can cause disaster. So technology has empowered us enormously, and it is glorious the way, the kind of luxury, the kind of things that we have in today's world, the facilities, the comforts, the luxuries, many of these were unimaginable even for royalty a few hundred years ago. Can you think of some comforts like that? Which were unimaginable even for royalty? Anyone? Air conditioning.
Airdrop from your phone.
Airdrop from your phone.
Yeah. Airplanes.
Airplanes. Just the phone itself, isn't it?
Yeah.
Airdrop is the phone itself. Anybody from any part of the world can communicate with anyone in any part of the world by just pressing a few buttons. Nowadays you don't even have to press buttons. We can just voice activated phones also be. So what we have discovered about the outer world is amazing. At the same time, what is it that we have forgotten about the inner world? And what is the result of that? So this is my introduction to how I found that this second quadrant, if I may say. First is no spirituality, no technology. Second is technology but no spirituality. So I was riding headlong toward that, and I found that something is missing. And that what is missing is that we all need an inner sense of meaning and purpose for our lives. Without that, whatever we may have, it is simply an excuse and an escape way. So if we consider, most people when they think about the past, maybe the dark ages, before the medieval times, they think about this first quadrant. What is the first quadrant? No spirituality, no technology. Now that is a terrible place to be in. We human beings, by our nature, are progressive. Now, whatever condition we are in, we constantly strive to improve that. So, by technology, we don't have to just refer to specifically certain machines that we have made. But the idea that whatever situation we are in, we try to improve that. A cow, for generation upon generation, for millennia, will eat the same grass. We humans, if we are told to eat the same food for a week, I need a break. We have hundreds and thousands of cuisines all over the world. So when we eat, we want to change things, we want to improve things. A sparrow will stay in more or less the same kind of nest. But we humans have hundreds and thousands of houses. So we, by our very nature, are progressive. And technology represents, we could say, the power to change outer things for the better, to progress externally. And if we have no prospects, either to improve externally or improve internally, then that is an extremely miserable state to be in. In fact, you could say that is a nihilistic worldview, where nothing matters. What I do externally doesn't matter, what I do internally doesn't matter. So, if we get into that zone, and I will talk about how from the second it's very easy to fall back into the first. So when we feel that nothing matters, what I do outer, externally or internally, nothing matters, that is a terrible state to be in. And most people who are depressed, they often sink into this stage. Depression can of course have many complex social as well as biochemical causes, but essentially it is a state where we feel nothing matters. Why do anything? So a state where we can do nothing, or we don't feel like doing anything, where neither internally nor externally, that is a very disempowered stage. And to some extent, a few hundred years ago, many people were in that level. And this is a state we all need to get out of as quickly as possible. And over the last 4 centuries, since the engine of scientific progress started, what happened was the primary movement out of this circle is upward. It's upward, so that there is enormous technological progress. Now, the nature of the human mind is that when it focuses on one thing, the more attention stays on one thing, attention goes off other things. That's just the way our mind works. So we can't process too many things at the same time. Have any of you heard of this, the gorilla experiment? Okay, thank you. So basically, say there are a group of 3-4 people playing a ball, and one tosses the ball to the next person, the second tosses the ball to the third person, and you have to count how many times the ball was tossed. And people are so caught in counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and in between a person comes with a gorilla mask and he brandishes his chest, beats his chest, and he walks out. And 90% of the people who watch this video don't even notice the gorilla. Why? Because their attention is so caught in looking, okay, how many times is the ball exchanged? So even if something is very prominent, it gets lost. When attention focuses on one thing, attention goes off on other things. So what has happened in the last few centuries is that the attention is focused enormously on technological improvement. And the result of that is, while we are focused on outer change through technology, inner change through spirituality has been neglected. In fact, the idea of spirituality itself has been neglected to a large extent. And now, to some extent, there is a resurgence of that in the last few decades, resurgence of spirituality. Because we all need not just external facilities. We need inner purpose for our living. Suppose you are staying in a particular house and you see the neighbor rushing out of their house, charging toward their car. And you are just outside. Hey, where are you going? Such a big hurry. Says, I'm going to put fuel in my car. Oh, okay. But after that, where are you going? Oh, after that I'll go to the next gas station to put fuel in my car. Okay. But where are you going? Says, no, after that I'll go to the next gas station. But where are you going? Says, I'm going to put fuel in my car. Okay. Now there's a difference between what we are driving with and what we are driving for. Now what we are driving with is very important. Without that we can't drive. But even more important is what we are driving for. Where are we going? So technology provides us the fuel by which we can drive. So what we live with and what we live for are two different things. And what has happened, technology has provided us extraordinary resources for the first thing, what we live with. But what we live for, that has been lost. To have means without meaning is a hollow life. To have means of living without meaning for living, that is extremely hollow life. And unfortunately, that is what has happened in today's world. So because all the progress has happened in this direction, vertically upward. So to some extent, many things which were considered important, which were not only considered important, which were important, have been neglected. When science started progressing, science basically divided the world into two kinds of properties, primary properties and secondary properties. Now, science deemed as primary those properties which are measurable. Length, breadth, density, velocity, mass. These could be objectively studied. These could be mathematically correlated. Now, if we consider in our experience, if we meet someone, and suppose you go one day home and you have your friends, say, I met a very interesting person. Oh, really? Tell me something. Says, that person weighed 150 pounds and was 5 feet tall. Really? If somebody has some extraordinary dimensions, maybe somebody is 7 feet tall, maybe somebody is 300 pounds, that might strike. But normally, when we meet people, it's not their physical dimensions that are the primary thing that we consider. So, in the world of our experience, the physical dimensions are not what we primarily measure. So there are many things which are not physically measurable, but they are very important ones. And they have unfortunately been neglected. All of medical science at one level is meant to free people from pain, disease and pain. But in all of medical science, we can't have anything like a painometer. How much pain you are in? Let's have a reading of that. If you could have that, then nobody could be actually a hypochondriac. But we can't. Pain is an experience. It's a real experience. We don't want to experience it. There are some inferential scales, but it's not a mathematically quantifiable thing. Or I often give seminars on overcoming fear. So I did a historical study of various fears across the centuries. We found that there are two fears which entered the top 10 list in the 21st century. One of them was the fear of terrorists. Understandable. And the second is the fear of rejection. We try to form a relationship with someone and the other person abandons us, rejects us. So when, say, two people are trying to form a relationship, both of them want to know whether the other person really cares for them or not. With all our scientific advancement, we have thermometer, we have barometer. Can we have a love-o-meter? Say a boy proposes to a girl, please marry me. Let me take out my love-o-meter, let's see what's in your heart. We can't do that. Now love is something which we all long for. We want to feel connected, we want to feel valued, we want to feel loved. But love has no mathematical measure. Imagine if somebody asked you, did your mother love you? If you came from a good family, it would be an insult to ask a question like that. What do you mean my mother loved? Of course she loved me. What is the proof for that? What do you mean? Can you give mathematically quantifiable proof for that? but it is very real for us. The point I am making through all this is not to criticize science or technology, but it is to contextualize science and technology. The point I was making is earlier that when attention focuses on one thing, attention goes off. So what was considered primary by science, primary qualities, we have phenomenally progressed in those. But what was deemed secondary by science? Love, meaning, meaning of life, purpose of life, love. All these are not quantifiable and they get neglected. But these are what are primary for us in our experience of life, in our pursuit of a meaningful life. So what happens when these are neglected? Just as there are physical laws which govern the physical universe, similarly, there are laws which govern the working of our inner world also. Because there are other laws, we could say principles. Suppose somebody falls down, slips and falls down. Did you fall down? He says, no. I was just testing the law of gravity, whether it still works. Well, good that you just did a small test. If somebody steps off a 100-story building, says, I am testing gravity. What will happen? If you put gravity to test, gravity will put you to rest. So, there are principles that govern the physical world. And similarly, there are principles that govern the inner world. And just as if we are in disharmony with the principles that govern the outer world, if we step off from a 100-story building, we will not escape the consequences of gravity. So similarly, if we don't understand the principles of the inner world and its working, then we will crash. Now what is this crash in the inner world? So now I still now talk about the first, how historically we have moved from the first quadrant to the second quadrant. And we have been phenomenally successful. But I talked about certain things that are missing. Now what is spirituality? What do I mean by that specifically? So essentially, since different people have different ideas of spirituality, I'll talk about it in three broad terms. Many of us may think of spirituality as an emotion. I do certain things and I feel good. I do certain things, I feel peaceful, I feel connected, I feel whole. So we often think of spirituality in terms of emotion or experience. And that's true. Spirituality is an emotion and experience. But it is not just that. There is more to it. Spirituality also refers to the process by which we can get that emotion and experience. And spirituality is also a level of reality. Like we have the outer world and the inner world. So we could say there's the physical reality and there is the spiritual reality. So we could consider a 2-level building or a mountain. At the bottom of the mountain is physical reality, physical consciousness. At the top of the mountain is spiritual reality, spiritual consciousness. So now, for going up the mountain, there can be many different paths. But the idea is that if we get to the top, we experience life from a different way. We are not so affected by the daily ups and downs of life. Our life's ups and downs and our mind's ups and downs, they are like waves that hit the bottom of the hill. Anybody who is over there, they get swept away. But if we can rise to the top of the mountain, then we are not that affected by life's ups and downs, by the mind's ups and downs, both. Spiritual power so within us, there is a part of us which wants to rise up. And within us, there is also a part of us which wants to go down. We may sometimes experience this tussle whenever we try to do something which requires some determination. Say we want to do some meditation or some workout or some study, and we decide to wake up in the morning early, and we put the alarm. And the alarm rings, and the alarm is saying, wake up. And something inside us says, go to sleep. Go to sleep. And it depends. Many times you might just hear that inner voice, go to sleep. And then our resolutions get sabotaged by that. So basically, we have inside us broadly two kinds of forces. A force that inspires us to rise up, a force that inspires us to go down. And spirituality is the process by which our higher side is activated. Our higher side is empowered. The part of us which can be kind, which can be sensitive, which can be compassionate, which can be far-sighted, which can be truly caring, which can be determined, that is the part which is empowered by our spirituality. In contrast, if we consider the opposite of spirituality is physicality or sensuality. Sensuality, it focuses primarily on immediate pleasures. And because of that, often our lower side comes out. So now, if we consider the four quadrants, if you want to become spiritual, the idea is that we learn how to bring out our higher side. And how do we do that? Basically, there are two aspects to it, with which I'll conclude this talk and we can have a few questions. When we want to bring out the higher side within us, we all have a certain set of impressions. Inside us, we have certain behavioral patterns, certain habits, certain modes of functioning. And those are what we currently have. We can't suddenly change them. Among the various factors that shape our behavior, we have our genetics, that's what we are born with. Then we have our upbringing, the way we were, that created certain impressions and certain habits within us. And then beyond that, we have our association. So broadly speaking, there are many psychological theories, but you could say there are three broad theories. There is genetic determinism. We are all determined by our genes. If somebody is short-tempered, they say, oh, my genes made me short-tempered. Well, we don't function like that. We are pushed by our genes, but we can push back against them. Certainly we have some upbringing. Our parents, our social circle, are the kind of people we had around. They influence us in particular ways. But again, we can push back. And we have society around us. In fact, if you see some of the most inspiring stories that we hear about people are people who rose from circumstances which were very difficult. And still, they rose beyond those circumstances. So social determinism would be that the people around us shape how we behave. But if we are deterministic, then we have no capacity for determination. Everything about us is determined, and we can't actually function. Now Einstein himself, he was one of the greatest scientists of the last century, but he was profoundly disturbed, or concerned rather, by the implications of a non-spiritual or a materialistic worldview. He said, if matter is all that exists, there is no such thing as spiritual reality, then we have no free will. And then the Nazis, who killed millions of Jews, and many millions of others also, in their concentration camps, you cannot hold them responsible. Because they were genetically or socially programmed to act that way. Now, do we ever function like that? If say suddenly now all of you are sitting here and you are hearing this talk, and every one of you is reasonably confident that the person sitting next to you is not going to suddenly turn at you and slap you in the face. All of you are doubting now. So now, if somebody suppose did that, they slapped him. And why did he slap me? My genes told me to slap him. Really? My genes have told you to slap you now. So, all our relationships and even our system of justice is based on the presumption of responsibility. Responsibility means responsibility. Our ability to choose our response. And that requires free will. So within a materialistic worldview, we have no free will. So again, Einstein it's attributed to Einstein that he said, gravity can explain the falling of objects, but gravity can't explain people's falling in love. Because there is consciousness over there. There are conscious beings and conscious emotions over there. So the point I'm making here is that we all have free will. And we need to empower this free will. So the more we live in a non-spiritual way, the more materialistic our worldview, the more mechanical becomes our functioning. And we just become like programmed stimulus response machines. And in one sense, when somebody is addicted to something, addiction is almost like the person's behavior has become robotic. You show them the object, and immediately the response is, I want it. I'll do anything to get it. So the more we go away from our spirituality, the more we come under the control of matter and material things. And thus, we lose our inner power. Our inner power comes to the extent we can understand that I am different from my situations and I am also different from my emotions. And I am the chooser of my emotions. I am the observer of my emotions. I am feeling angry, but I can choose not to act angry. And we can't see the thoughts and emotions and desires of each other. And that is a great blessing. If we started seeing each other's thoughts, desires, emotions, not a single relationship could be sustained. You think like this about me? You have this kind of desires? You feel this way? Disgusting! So nature, we all have certain emotions and they just come up sometimes. But we have the capacity to restrain our emotions. And in many ways, culture means that we don't just give in to our impulses. We just don't give in to our emotions or our desires. So if we were just simply biological robots, then where do we have this power? We won't have this power. But we do have that power. If we didn't have that power, then our whole system of justice would be meaningless. All relationships would be meaningless. So to the extent we learn, we recognize that I am more than matter. There is my material body, that I have many emotions, but I am not just a product of matter working according to material laws. I am a conscious being and I have free will. So our free will becomes freer to the extent we rise above the matter that comprises our body and the matter that comprises our world. And to the extent we get caught within that matter, to that extent we lose our free will. When we lose our free will, we become robotic. And what happens when we become robotic? Now in today's world, if we, as Young said, that the more outer power we have, the more inner power we need. Unfortunately, what has happened, as we have lost our spiritual understanding, what we have forgotten about our inner world, that we are spiritual beings, different from our physical bodies, and different from the many urges that the body brings, different from the many allurements that the outer world promises. To the extent we forget this, to that extent, all the outer power that we have, the impulsiveness within us starts abusing it. So, and we can create a hellish situation for ourselves. Suppose somebody, we all get angry. But if somebody has a machine gun, has a gun when they are angry, that's super dangerous. Somebody is angry and they just had some fists, they might just beat somebody. That's bad. But that's not as much as damaging. So same way today, if we want to forget, just want to run away from life. If somebody from the, say, 1000 years down the line, if they came back and they examined the 21st century and they wanted to find out some artifact which defined the 21st century, one of the most widespread and most expensive artifacts would be movies. Millions of dollars are spent on making movies. Now, entertainment has always been a part of human society. But nowadays, it's because what is happening? Most people find their life so meaningless. I just want to escape from this. Start watching this movie, that movie, that movie. Just escape from reality. Entertainment can be enriching and refreshing, but entertainment can also be escapist. And so for so many people, life is so meaningful, so meaningless that we choose entertainment. Entertainment is not bad. How it is used. If it is used as a way to escape from life, then it is like a painkiller. Painkiller means that if somebody has a disease and they have pain, and just take pain medication, the pain goes away. But it is cured. Is it cured? It is covered, not cured. And that's why those who take pain medication, they have to constantly increase the dosage. And you will see the passion, the violence, the sensuality in entertainment has been increasing rapidly over the last few decades. Why? Because we all need more and more higher dosage of painkiller. So now if somebody is sick and they are in pain, a painkiller will also be required to manage the pain. But along with an analgesic, an antiseptic is also required. Along with a pain medication, a curative medication is also required. If that is not there, if it's only the pain medication and no curative medication, that is deception. So the technological progress alone is like pain medication. Eric Fromm said that technology is the art of rearranging reality so that we don't have to experience reality. It's the art of rearranging reality so that we don't have to experience reality. So now, that can be done in a way we want to make life more comfortable, or it can be done in a way that we try to escape from life. So what is the curative medicine? That is spirituality. Spirituality reveals to us that each one of us is a spiritual being, and we are on a journey of spiritual evolution. And in this journey of spiritual evolution, every action of ours counts. Whether in the world's eyes it counts or not, it counts in our inner world. Every time we choose to do the right thing, we grow internally. Even if the world doesn't notice it, we are growing internally. We are growing in our willpower, in our character, in our self-mastery. And if we grow in this way, then whatever opportunities we get in life sometimes provides us opportunities, sometimes it doesn't. But when the opportunities come, if we are better prepared internally, if we are balanced, if we have self-mastery, then even from small, we can do a lot. And if we don't have self-mastery, even if we get a lot of opportunities, we'll squander all of them. So there is talent, there is temperament. Talent and temperament together lead to achievement. So what our spirituality does is, it improves our temperament. It improves our capacity to manage our emotions, to not get swept away by the moods of the mind, to not get shaken by life's ups and downs, because we understand our own indestructibility. And then, whatever talents we have, whatever abilities we have, we can use them more constructively, we can use them more effectively. So the missing self in the selfie is, we have so much technology by which we can take better and better selfies. And that's fine. But what is the self that we are looking at? Self-esteem, self is not just the physical looks that we have. Self-esteem doesn't come just by patting ourselves on the back. Oh, you're so good. Or somebody else comes and pats on our back. Oh, you're so good. That's fine. We need encouragement at times. But self-esteem comes by having a meaningful purpose and by tangibly progressing toward that purpose. We set up some goal. This is what I want to do. This is meaningful in my life. This is what I want to do. And we start taking small but significant steps toward that. So spirituality reveals that we all can be much better than what we are. All of us have potential divinity within us. All of us can become channels for the infinite consciousness to manifest through us. To the extent we become spiritual, we learn to manage our inner world, the infinite can manifest through us and can make the world brighter. Each one of us can contribute to making the world a brighter and better place, provided we make our inner world a brighter and better place. And the UNESCO Charter says that just as war begins in the minds of people first, similarly peace has to begin in the minds of people. And just as darkness in the outer world comes from darkness in the inner world, light in the outer world can come from light in the inner world. And our spirituality can empower us to make our inner world brighter and better. And there are many different spiritual traditions and there are many different spiritual paths. I will not go into the specifics of spirituality here, but each one of us, whichever quadrant we may be in the second or we might be in the first. But if you can move to the third quadrant, technology is not short in today's world. We all have technology. But if you can enrich ourselves with spirituality, then the two going together can be an extremely powerful combination. Technology can make things better. Spirituality can make people better. And when we have better things and we have better people, then we can surely have a better world. So I'll summarize what I spoke today. The topic of missing self in the selfie. I talked about the 4 quadrants. No spirituality, no technology. Technology, no spirituality. No technology but spirituality. And technology and spirituality. So today the world is hurtling towards the second quadrant. And I was also on that same journey. But I found people who were even technologically brilliant, somehow they lacked inner power. And that destroyed them. So I started exploring and I discovered that what we have learned about the outer world is amazing, but what we have forgotten about our inner world is also amazing. And what is the essence of the inner world? In our inner world, we have a need for meaning and purpose. Technology provides us things to live with, but not things to live for. It's like getting fuel for a car but not knowing where we are going. So what is it that we live for? Science focused on what it calls as primary qualities, measurable things. And they're important: length, breadth, mass, density, volume, velocity. But these are not what primarily matter for us. For us, its meaning, its values, its love. These are what matter for us. And what happened was we ended up with a lot of things to live with, but nothing to live for. Because that aspect of life was lost. And the result of that is when we have outer power without inner power, then inside us there is a potentially divine side and there is a potentially dark side. And the more spiritual we become, our divine side gets empowered. And the more materialistic we become or non-spiritual we become, our dark side becomes empowered. Why is that? Because for our spiritual side to be empowered, it is our free will that has to be acknowledged and used. But in the materialistic worldview, there is no free will. And the more our consciousness gets caught in matter, the more we become like robots. Like a person who is addicted, their consciousness is caught in the substance of addiction, and they just become like stimulus response machines. So the more we rise above our situations and our emotions, the more we access our free will. And by our free will, we can restrain our dark side and we can empower our divine side. And that, the process which enables us to do that, that is spirituality. When we are at the top of the mountain, then we are fully spiritual. But even when we go along that journey, then we empower our higher side. And when we empower our higher side, each one of us can become much, much better than what we are right now. And in today's world, most people find themselves in a situation where life, when it becomes troubling and burdensome, we use technology to escape from it. Movies are probably the greatest artifact of the 21st century. And technology in itself, it's being used here as a entertainment specifically, which is manufactured using technology in many ways, is used as a painkiller. So pain medication, if it is a substitute for curative medication, it is dangerous. And that's why we always had entertainment throughout history, but now we have obsession with entertainment. Because the pain is not being cured, it's being covered. So along with entertainment, we need enlightenment. Enlightenment means understanding our inner world. And that comes through spiritual growth. So spiritual growth essentially means that we understand ourselves as spiritual beings. We are on a journey of spiritual evolution. And every action that we do contributes to, if it doesn't contribute to making the world better, it at least contributes to making ourselves better. Every time we do the right thing, we are using our free will constructively and we are regaining inner power. So spirituality is the process that helps us to regain our inner power, and thus we can contribute to making a better and brighter world. Technology can make things better, spirituality can make people better. And to overtake technology in the next few decades, I don't think they are in a race that one has to overtake the other, but definitely as life becomes more and more empty, more and more people will look for something spiritual. Now whether they find it or not, that depends on how accessible spirituality is made to them. Because in general, the human tendency is to choose the path of least resistance. So we may look for spirituality a little bit, and if we don't find it, we will again sink back into technologically created illusions. And because there are so many illusions, maybe in the past when people wanted entertainment, there's just one TV with one channel on it. Now there are hundreds of channels and then there are thousands, millions of websites. So we can just spend our whole life clicking At least on one website there will be happiness. But we need to change not just what we do externally, but we need to change internally. So if the resources for inner change are made accessible widely, then there will be people who take it up. But if they are not made available, then even if people have moments of epiphany, oh, is there something higher in life? I want to find out. We'll search for a little bit and then we'll again relapse. So a lot depends on those who are themselves practicing spirituality and sharing spirituality, how much they make spiritual resources accessible. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Thank you. And there's a question.
What is your practical advice to treat the addiction? Like, for example, food addiction or internet addiction. Like, one thing is like food addiction. Like, I took that list to not eat snack in between meals. Like, but when I see snack, I go and grab it.
Okay, yeah.
So, like, I just want to eat 2 meals a day, but sometimes I want to skip snacks off. But when I see snacks, I go and automatically eat it. And then I regret, oh God, why did I do it? And all those things. So what is the easiest way to beat the addiction? Practically.
Okay, what is the easiest way to beat addiction? Well, I don't know if there is any easiest way. Because there are two things over here. See, each one of us is an individual. And say this is the state of indulgence and this is the state of abstinence. Now for somebody it might just be a straight walk. Or somebody that might be a big mountain in between. And so somebody, for them, maybe they are overeating and they just give it up in one day, or maybe just they decide I'm not going to do it and they give it up. And we may say, oh, I am not able to give it up. But they might be compulsive phone addicts and they can't give it up. And we say, I don't want to use phone, I'm not going to use phone. So we, in general, we shouldn't compare ourselves too much with others. Because if we compare, it can be sometimes very discouraging. We don't know what kind of conditionings we have inside us, and we don't know what mountain we have to cross or what mountain somebody else has to cross. So that's just from where we are, can we move forward? And within that, the most important thing is there are two kinds of freedom. There is freedom from and freedom for. So we often obsess over, I want to be free from this. I want to be free from this addiction or this. And yes, it may be important for us, but the nature of the mind is that it can't not think of something. Thought energy is different from physical energy. Say if I touch this and there's electric current going through this, and I get a jolt, and then I will decide throughout this talk I won't touch this mic stand. But so with the physical things I can decide not to touch. But with respect to mental things, in a thought level, to decide to not think about something is also a thought. So if I tell all of you, for the next 30 seconds, please don't think of a pink monkey. Except for a pink monkey, whatever you want to think, you can think about. Just don't think of a pink monkey. What will happen?
Think about it.
In your whole life, you may never have thought of pink monkey. Pink monkey, pink monkey. How did it become pink? Was it painted? Was it genetically mutated? So, we can't not think of something. That's why the important thing in life is that not what we are trying to get ourselves free from, but what we are trying to free ourselves for. So focus on that. That means if we want to, as I say, we all get what is called a snack attack. Snack attacks are very difficult to resist. So now when that happens, so if the focus is, no, I will not eat, it doesn't work. It creates a sense of deprivation. Oh, why can't I eat? but try to see what you can fill your life with. So focus on the positive. And when you focus on the positive, okay, I want to do this. Not necessarily that we have to be running around constantly, but just have purposeful engagements to do. And ideally speaking, if we consider this circle of things which are good for us and circle of things that we like, if these two circles were identical, life would be so jolly, isn't it? But these two circles are not entirely non-identical also. There is some overlap between the two. So try to have the activities within that intersection as easily accessible as possible. So it's our desires will come like waves upon us, and when the waves come, it's very difficult to fight the waves on us by ourselves. But if we have an anchor and we hold on to the anchor, we won't be swept away. So when I said try to focus on what you are free for, so see something which lies in the circle of what is good for intersection of what is good for us and what is also we like to do, and that can become our anchor. Suppose we like music. Suppose we like to read some wisdom quotes. Then keep those accessible. And when the urge to do something which we don't want to do comes, don't focus on saying no to that. The best way to deal with temptation is to not deal with temptation. Temptation is very, very deceptive, very seductive. So if we try to deal with it, it will make us succumb to it. So it's like the way to deal with this, you could say, is by attentive inattention. That means we know this urge is there, but we attentively are inattentive to it. It means we consciously direct our attention somewhere else. Now, if we don't have somewhere else to focus on, like say if you are in a room with someone you don't want to talk with, and they are the only person in the room, then what do? You look at the walls? You will have to talk with them. But if there is someone else who you like and who you are interested in, you start talking with them, then this person gets the signal and then they will go away gradually. May not go away, they may stay, but you don't have to pay attention to them. We don't have to engage with them. So similarly for us, we need to create something which we can give our attention to, and then we can neglect it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone last question? Yes, please.
So you've established that it's really important to have spirituality. What would be like your examples or methods of practicing spirituality and progressing spiritually?
Okay, what would be my method for practicing spirituality? As I said, there are different traditions, and we could say these different traditions are like different pathways up the mountain. Now some paths might be easier, some paths might be tougher. It also depends on each person. In our tradition, we are a part of the tradition called Bhakti Yoga. Yoga is normally associated with physical postures. Now that's one part of yoga. Just like say in baseball or cricket, if the batter stands in a particular posture, a particular pose. But that's not for style or fashion. That's so that when the ball comes, you can hit the ball as effectively as possible. So similarly, the yogic postures are meant to help us raise our consciousness. The consciousness like the ball. The physical postures are ultimately meant to help us raise our consciousness up. And Bhakti Yoga is the process where Bhakti means love or divine love specifically. So Bhakti Yoga is the yoga of divine love. And in Bhakti Yoga we try to connect with the divine. And the mantra chanting that we did, that is one way for elevating our consciousness. Broadly speaking, we talk about three things. We call it as the ABC. It's association, books, and chanting. So association is very powerful in shaping our desires. Our desires are not just linear, they are also triangular. That means we may say, see something and desire, I want to eat this. It's a linear desire. But triangular means that sometimes we see somebody else doing something. And then we get the desire for that. That's why whenever companies have a new product launch, they have celebrity endorsements. So you say, oh, the celebrity is endorsing, I want to buy this. So for us, if we want to grow spiritually, it's vital to have the association of spiritually minded. So when we see somebody doing some meditation, doing some spiritual practice, then let me also do it. And so that's the first principle, association. And all of you have a facility over here in the Mantra House where you can have spiritually minded people association. And as much as we can, in our situation, if we associate, then that is the single most powerful factor. Because we also harmonize with our spiritual impetus, then we can move forward positively. B is books. Books is wisdom texts which talk about life's spiritual dimension, like the Bhagavad Gita and other wisdom texts. So if you read those books, then they give also a intellectual foundation for what we are doing. Otherwise, it is just sentimental. And if you do something which is only just I feel good, so I do it. And what happens? Sometimes it may not feel that good and we'll give it up. But for achieving anything tangible in our life, sometimes we have to go against our emotions, our immediate feelings. So that intellectual foundation helps a lot. And then C is the mantra chanting. Which the music meditation that we did, this is a spiritual sound. And sound is often the mediator between the sensual and the spiritual realms. So the sound is like the mantra chanting, the sound of the mantras is like an elevator for our consciousness. The more we let that sound enter into us, we enter into that sound. Our consciousness enters into that sound. Just as the consciousness when it enters into the sound, if we enter into an elevator, the elevator lifts us up. So similarly, the more we enter into that sound, we'll find that our consciousness will rise higher and higher. And we'll experience peace, we'll experience connectedness, we'll experience strength. And thus, through this ABC association, books and chanting, we all can increase our spirituality. Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
Thank you.